Don't think about violins. There are no violins to be expected. Hi, I'm Colin Stone and this is Talk Shop from Pink Elephant, here to analyse the communication and presentation skills of the world's big names to highlight what works and what they need to change. This time, and for the first and potentially last time on this series, it's Scotland's soon-to-be former First Minister Nicola Sturgeon and her resignation speech from February 2023. Let's dive in.
Being First Minister of Scotland is, in my admittedly biased opinion, the very best job in the world. It is a privilege beyond measure, one that has sustained and inspired me in good times and through the toughest hours of my toughest days.
Really interesting opening there, because if you rewatch the first 5 words, the First Minister has said them so quickly, it sounded actually more like one word. Being First Minister of Scotland. Now, this is called chunking. For example, know what I mean? Is a classic chunk. Many words, but it comes out more like one. But what's so interesting about this is that if you contrast the end of that opening section, it's become almost one word a second. Really crisp delivery, every vowel and consonant enunciated. And it's what we typically see in big speeches. We're nervous in the beginning, we rush through the start, and then we relax, we settle in. Okay, let's get into this properly.
In my head and in my heart, I know that time is now. That it is right for me, for my party, and for the country. And so today I am announcing my intention to step down as First Minister and leader of my party.
I'm going to come back to the delivery from the First Minister later. I want to draw your attention to the structure here. It's taken close to 2 minutes to get to the actual point of the speech. I'm resigning. Now, this news had been leaked. We all knew Nicola Sturgeon was calling this press conference at Bute House to officially announce it. But our advice is always, in any communication, be that emails, meetings, or speeches, start with the point and add the background, add the context later, or as you go. The problem with burying the lead is that the audience is simply waiting to hear you get to that point. Starting with the big picture is often what we feel we have to do as speakers, ease them into it, tell them who you are first, explain the background, but audiences are impatient and easily distracted. So I'd have loved for the First Minister to stand up at the podium and start with what she just told us, and then get into the pride, the 8 years, the emotions, the best job in the world. Let's keep watching.
Nevertheless, for my party and above all for the country. Let me set out as best as I can my reasons. First, though I know it will be tempting to see it as such, this decision is not a reaction to short-term pressures.
If you're familiar with our training, you'll know all about pink elephants. For example, don't think about a pink elephant. And that's the problem. The brain still comes up with the thing I've told you not to. So here, we have the First Minister saying this was not a reaction to short-term pressures. And now we're having to consider the fact that maybe it was a reaction to what's been going on in the last few months. So how do we get rid of these unnecessary negatives? Well, rather than ever tell someone what you're not, define your communication and, in this instance, your decisions through what they are. For example, my first reason for resigning, this has been a long-term decision. I've been here for 8 years and I'm done. Which basically is what she goes on to say. But you can do that without drawing attention to this wasn't to do with gender reform or the trans prisoners arguments. Stick with positive language. And by the way, there are a lot of pink elephants in this speech.
This decision comes from a deeper and longer term assessment. I know it might seem sudden, but I have been wrestling with it, albeit with oscillating levels of intensity for some weeks.
Oscillating levels of intensity. Sounds like Loath's next experimental shoegaze album, but it does give me an opportunity to talk about jargon, words and phrases that audiences struggle with. Now, one of Miss Sturgeon's aims in government was to close the gap in Scotland's schools between those who achieve the most and the least. And interestingly enough, a challenge we put to people in our courses with the words they choose is, would a child have understood your speech? The reason for this is, according to various sources, the average reading age in the UK is around 9 or 10 years old. So, with that said, would a Scottish primary pupil understand oscillating levels of intensity? Do I even understand what the word oscillating means? No, and that's my point. It takes skill to make complex matters simple, but this, to me, is simply overcomplication and fancy language for the sake of it, because even that word has gone over my head. Did she mean I was thinking about this more often and for longer? Because if so, say that instead.
These jobs are a privilege, but they are also rightly hard, and especially in the case of First Minister, relentlessly so. Now, to be clear, I'm not expecting violins here, but...
Don't think about violins. There are no violins to be expected.
When I entered government in 2007, my niece and youngest nephew were babies, just months old. As I stepped down, they are about to celebrate their 17th birthdays. Now that I think about it, that's exactly the age to be horrified at the thought of your auntie suddenly having more time for you.
Yeah, I really like this. It's a great example of personalising a corporate public speech with a story that demonstrates your point. We're big fans of doing this in every industry. She could have left the sentence at, I'm a human being, but the First Minister took it a step further, and we're hearing now about babies who are now awkward teenagers, even the visual picture of her as an auntie. And there's also some nice, light-hearted, self-deprecating humour at the end there too. Well delivered as well. That section gets top marks.
And the nature and form of modern political discourse means that there is a much greater intensity, dare I say it, brutality, to life as a politician than in years gone by.
Stopping it here, notice how often she's pausing.
All in all, and actually for a long time without it being apparent, it takes its toll on you and on those around you. And if that is true in the best of times, it has been more so in recent years. Leading this...
Again, this is good public speaking technique, using regular short pauses even within a sentence, and then a couple of seconds at the end of each. The First Minister, for as long as I can remember, has always done this, whether it's been in a speech like that or dealing with questions at Holyrood, and it's something we advocate. 2 reasons why. Number 1, it gives the audience time to absorb what you've just said, and 2, it gives you, the speaker, more time to think and consider what's coming next. Okay, let's continue.
I've always been of the belief that no one individual should be dominant in any system for too long. But while it's easy to hold that view in the abstract, it is much harder to live by it. With this decision, I am trying to do so.
Let me ask you all to do something right now. A clear instruction. Try and like this video. And now you're left with a dilemma. Do I like it or do I leave it? Try is a totally useless word, and it implies failure. For example, if someone says, I'll try and call you today, they're unlikely to. If a friend says, I'll try and be at yours for 7, they'll be late. So we use try as a caveat for when we're going to fail. So that's why I've stopped it here. I'm trying to do so, says Nicola Sturgeon. And now there's doubt about what she's just said. So whenever possible, take the word try out and instead go with an active verb. I'm doing so. And rather than try to like this video, please like this video. Thanks.
So to the people of Scotland, to all of the people of Scotland, whether you voted for me or not, please know that being your First Minister has been the privilege of my life. Nothing, absolutely nothing I do in future will ever come anywhere close. Thank you from the very bottom of my heart. And with that...
Okay, that's the end of the formal speech. On to questions after that. It's a really strong conclusion. She's acknowledging everyone rather than just the chosen few, and the delivery is exactly what it needs to be for a speech of this caliber. And in the final 30 seconds there, as I highlighted with Joe Biden, she leaves the word-for-word speech behind almost entirely. There's only a couple of glances to the script. She engages the room with eye contact. It feels more connected and engaging as a result. Now, I appreciate you want to get a performance like this close to word perfect, but I and audiences will always take a more natural, if imperfect speech over one where the presenter's eyes are buried in the script. It's all about the delivery for the soon-to-be former First Minister. She does well in this speech what she has done well for years. It's slow, full of pauses, it's nicely intonated, touches of levity and humour, and the overall balance of script reading to eye contact is good. Despite that, there are still points to improve. The pink elephants, the unnecessary negatives, things that this decision is not, distract the audience and detract from the message. And the First Minister has come out with many of these pink elephant quotes over the years. Regardless of what you make of her 8 years in charge, one thing was clear in the aftermath of this resignation speech. Her political opponents in Holyrood were pleased that she was going. And that to me says a lot for her formidable communication style, as well as the perceived gulf between her and any of her would-be replacements. I trust you've enjoyed this edition of Talk Shop, and if you want to learn how to grow your confidence in public speaking, you can buy one of our e-learning courses on the Pink Elephant Academy and use the discount code TALKSHOP for 30% off everything. Till next time, smile and speak slowly.